Wait, closing costs are how much? No, I don't want you to go there. I don't want you to be getting to buy a home and then be shocked at all these surprises. So today we're going to talk about what are closing costs, what they are, and what to expect so you can be prepared. Hi, I'm Teresa Wellman with HomeownerExperience.com, your local San Jose, California realtor. And today we're talking about expectations when buying a home so that you can be prepared. We're going to specifically cover closing costs and all the details that go into it. So let's jump right in. First, what really is a closing cost? Technically, a closing cost is any charge or fee that you will pay when buying a home. Now, sellers have closing costs and buyers have closing costs, but today we're going to focus just on buyer closing costs. So what is really included in closing costs? Well, technically there's two areas, and I see a lot of buyers get these confused. There is cash to close, which you might hear a lot of lenders talk about, and there's closing costs. Now, cash to close is a larger sum of money because that includes your down payment and your closing costs. And closing costs are just those extra fees that you're going to have to pay up front that maybe you aren't thinking above and beyond that down payment. So I'm going to go through an actual net sheet for you here to point out specifically, but just on a really high level, the closing costs that you're going to have to pay are related to lender fees, title and escrow fees, maybe transfer fees for an HOA or the city that the property is in. Also, something to consider are any mortgage insurance premiums or home insurance premiums that must be paid up front. And then there's going to be interest on your loan. We'll get more into that in a little bit. Oh, and one big one could be prorated property taxes. So we're definitely going to talk about that as well. So let's jump right into the computer and look at a net sheet and talk about some of those fees that you could expect. This is an actual net sheet that I have from a recent buyer sale that happened. And this buyer had a lot of questions which inspired this video. So I want to make sure to go through this thoroughly so any future buyers also know about this and they know that I am happy to discuss these details for you up front so you know what to expect. Here we are with an actual net sheet from a transaction I closed with the buyer just a little bit ago. You see it was at the end of August. So this is a property in San Jose. So I want to go through the common fees that a buyer might see when purchasing a home in San Jose. So this first line is the green line, is going to be prorated loan interest and also insurance premiums for the year. So as you can see, this transaction closed on August 17th or August 18th. It was the settlement date actually. So they're going to pay interest from the 17th when the loan funds the day before escrow until the first of the month. So that is 15 days of interest that will need it to be paid up front. Now, if you close at the end of the month, you're not really going to have any of this. Or maybe you're going to have a full month ahead of time, depending on how the bank does the payments with your loan. But typically, there's going to be some interest here depending on when in the month that you close. And then if we look down here at hazard insurance, this one was estimated still on this estimated net sheet, but you're going to pay the year's premium likely ahead of time because the lender likely wants to see that the home is set up to be insured for at least that first year. And then they will continue to monitor as you decide after that whether you want to renew every quarter, every 6 months, every year, however you do it. Now let's look at the yellow fees. Now the yellow fees are going to be loan or lender fees specific to getting your loan. There's a preparation fee. There's going to be appraisal and credit report fees that are necessary for getting your credit report and getting the appraisal on the house. Then there's a processing fee, which it takes for the bank to get it through all the system. And then there could be also little miscellaneous fees. This property was in a flood zone, so it needed a flood certification fee. The insurance monitoring is what I was saying. They're checking to make sure you've got the insurance on the property and making sure it stays active. And then I'm not sure what the tax service fee is, but that's a pretty standard fee for lenders. Now let's look at the blue line. The blue line is the prorated real estate taxes. So taxes for property taxes are gathered every 6 months. So July 1st through the end of the year. And then if you close in the beginning of the year, taxes are collected from January 1st until June 30th. So depending when you close and when the taxes were collected, either you are going to owe the seller if the seller already had to pay for them, or the seller is going to owe you depending on when the taxes were due and paid. So there could be some time here. Definitely talk with your agent about that to understand exactly what that number will work out to be. But it is real estate taxes you would have normally paid, but this is going to be at the seller's old old rate, you're going to get a supplemental tax bill to make up that difference at your new tax rate as well. Now let's look at the purple lines here. The purple are escrow and processing fees such as courier, notary, the recording fees, and just general escrow fees. Now these fees sometimes fluctuate based on I'm sorry, they're pretty flat fees, these fees in the purple. The one I want to point out is this orange one, the title fee. Now this is a loan policy, a title insurance for your loan, and this is going to vary by the purchase price or the loan amount. So that number will fluctuate depending on the size of property that you are purchasing. And then the last thing to point out that is only you're going to find in San Jose is a city transfer tax. So this is a large tax that is gathered. It is typically split 50-50 between the buyer and seller. So this is the 50% buyer piece. So this was a $1.45 million purchase of a property, and they're spending $23.90 on the transfer tax. So it's $3.30 per thousand. Under $2 million, above $2 million, that number goes up quite a bit. So definitely touch base with your real estate agent to understand that specific number in more detail. Now your EMD or your earnest money deposit and your down payment again are not part of the closing costs, and they need to be paid in two different phases. So another common question I really get from buyers is, when do I pay these closing costs, or when do I pay my down payment or earnest money? So let's talk a little bit about the timing, and then we'll get into the specifics. So your earnest money deposit is going to be written up with the contract. So typically that's going to be deposited into the escrow company 1 to 3 days after you have a ratified purchase contract between you and the seller. The remaining balance of your down payment is going to be due a couple days before close of escrow. And I say remaining balance because your earnest money deposit, yes, it does go towards your down payment. Another question I've seen online a lot is earnest money legally required? Yes, it is, because it's a legally binding contract. Let me point out the contract to you right here. It is part of the collateral that you're going to do your job to close the escrow. So the seller wants to see some money laid up front and held in that third-party escrow company to make sure that you're going to follow through on their tasks, and they will follow through on their tasks. Now let's talk a little bit about other related questions to closing costs and down payments. So can your closing costs be included in a loan? Well, I mean, I've not seen that be the case for a home purchase. Definitely in a refinance, you will see lenders offer that the closing costs be rolled into it. But the reason for that is you have a lot of equity when you're usually refinancing. So you're actually eating up a little of your equity to make that loan amount bigger. For a home purchase, that doesn't work because you've already got an agreed upon amount with the bank, whether it's 5%, 10%, 20% or more, to put down on the purchase of the property. So closing costs are on top of that. But some lenders will offer credit to help offset that. And so it kind of feels like it's rolled into loan, but really the lender is offering a credit. Now, as we're going through and talking about all these different details with the home purchase, I also get a lot of questions about, are there other steps of the house purchase that I should be aware of? Do you have a checklist? How can you help me pace through these steps? Well, you know what? I got you covered on that. Definitely check out the link above. It's my home buyer's checklist that has 12 steps to buying a home. I really recommend you watch that video next.